Hi guys! Welcome back to the weird side of YouTube. I'm your ghost host with the most, author DCKnipe, and Theodore is co-hosting today in his pumpkin Halloween getup. And today we are going to be reading more from the Scary Stories Treasury. So let's get weird!
We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since days of old. We were dead a long time ago. We're the ghosts of the stories you've told. We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since the days of old. We were dead a long time ago. Ghosts in the scary stories you've told.
Today's story is called The Curse. And Theodore, edit this picture of the curse. My dad's friend, Charlie Potter, was a small, nervous man who was always looking around as if he was in some kind of danger. After he told me the story about his college fraternity, I understood why. The frat doesn't exist anymore, he said. It was banned years ago. We had just 9 members at that point, and we were taking in 2 more, Jack Lawton and Ernie Kramer. One night in January, just about this time of year, the 9 of us took them out into the country for their initiation. We took them to an old deserted house where 2 young men about our age had been murdered recently. Their murderer was still at large. We gave Jack a lighted candle and told him to go up to the 3rd floor. Stay there for about an hour, we told him. Then come back down. Don't speak. Don't make any noise. If your candle goes out, carry on in the dark. From where we were standing, we could see the light from Jack's candle moving up the stairs to the 2nd floor, then to the 3rd. But when he got to the 3rd floor, his candle went out. We guessed that he had come to a drafty corner, and the wind blew it out. But when the hour went by and he didn't come down, we weren't so sure. We waited another 15 minutes and got more and more nervous. So we sent Ernie Kramer up after him. When Ernie got to the 3rd floor, his candle also went out. We waited 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and there was no sign of either of them. Come on down, we called, but they didn't answer. Finally, we decided to go and get them. Armed with flashlights, we started up the stairs. It was as quiet and dark as a grave in that house. When we got to the 2nd floor, we called out again, but there was no answer. When we got to the 3rd floor, we walked into a great big open space like an attic. Jack and Ernie weren't there, but we saw footprints in the dust. These led to a room on the other side of the attic. That room was also empty, but there was fresh blood on the floor, and the window was wide open. It was about 25 feet to the ground, but there was no ladder or rope in sight that they could have used to get down. We searched the rest of the house and the land around the house and found nothing. We decided that they were playing a trick on us. We figured that in some way they had escaped through the window and were hiding in the woods. The blood on the floor was to throw us off the track. We guessed that they'd show up the next day with a lot of stories and a lot of laughs, but they didn't. The next day we told the dean of men what had happened, and he reported it to the police. The police didn't find anything either, and after several weeks the search ended. To this day no one knows what happened to Jack Lawton and Ernie Kramer. There isn't much more to tell, he said. We weren't arrested, but the college disbanded the fraternity and suspended the 9 of us from school for a year. The strangest part came after we graduated. Someone must have placed a curse on us. Every year since then, around the time of the initiation, one of us has died or gone crazy. I'm the only one left, he said, and I'm in pretty good health, but there are times when I feel just a little peculiar. Sorry, I had to do that. Now rush at someone in the audience and scream, ah. This next one is called The Church, and you know how I feel about churches. There was a fellow named Larry Berger, who wasn't afraid of anybody alive, but anybody who was dead scared the wits out of him. This is not something I've ever understood, because the dead can't hurt you. The living are the ones that are fucked up. One night, Larry was driving in the country in his old Jeep when he got caught in a bad thunderstorm. The rain was coming down in sheets. Since his Jeep didn't have a top to it, Larry started looking for a place to take shelter. But at the first place he came to, he didn't even slow down. It was an old deserted cabin, probably as dry as a bone inside. But Larry knew for a fact that it was haunted, and he wasn't going to stay there. A few miles farther, he came to an old abandoned church standing all alone in a field. It hadn't been used in years. All the window glass was gone, but it still had sections of the roof intact. So Larry parked his Jeep and ran inside. It was as dark as could be in there. Larry groped around until he found a pew and sat down. It was nice and dry, just as he had thought it would be, and he stretched out his legs and made himself comfortable. Suddenly there was a big flash of lightning, and Larry saw that he wasn't the only one in that church. There were people sitting in almost every pew. They all had their heads bowed as if they were praying, and they all were dressed in white. These must be ghosts sitting in their shrouds, Larry thought. They must have come in from some graveyard to get dry. If they're ghosts, how are they wet? Larry jumped up and ran down the aisle as fast as he could, right into one of the ghosts. And the ghosts, he went, bah! I don't know what that means. He's a sheep. He listens to Trump. He's a sheep. Alright, this is the picture of the church. My cat's biting me. I'm not sure why. Maybe she wants quiet so she can nap. Alright, I think we have time for a couple more. This is called Cemetery Soup. It's actually a little bit like the Big Toe that we read last time, so I'm not gonna read it. Here's a short one. Theodore's gone. Again. Been hanging out with Blackheart too much. The pirate captain gave him some rum. Ellen had just fallen asleep when she heard a strange voice. Ellen, it whispered, I am coming up the stairs. I am on the first step. Now I'm on the second step. Ellen got scared and called her parents, but they didn't hear her, and they didn't come. Then the voice whispered, Ellen, I'm on the top step. Now I'm in the hall. Now I'm outside your room. Then it whispered, I'm standing right next to your bed. And then, I've got you! Ellen screamed and the voice stopped. Her father rushed into the room and turned on the light. Somebody is in here, Ellen said. They looked and looked, but nobody was there. I've heard stories like that before. How that dead man danced. I like this one, the slithery D. The slithery D, the slithery D. Okay. The slithery D, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat me. The slithery D, he came out of the sea. He ate all the others, but he didn't eat... Slithery D. Okay, what's next? The Wendigo. Everyone loves Wendigos. A wealthy man wanted to go hunting in a part of northern Canada, about the Carolina, where a few people had ever hunted. He traveled to a trading post and tried to find a guide to take him, but no one would do it. It was too dangerous, they said. Finally, he found an Indian, Native American, indigenous person of America, who needed money badly, and he agreed to take him. The Indian's name was Defago. That sounds Spanish to me. They made camp in the snow near a large frozen lake. For 3 days they hunted, but they had nothing to show for it. The third night, a windstorm came up. They lay in their tent listening to this wind howling and the trees whipping back and forth. To see the storm better, the hunter opened his tent flap. That sounds gross. What he saw startled him. There wasn't a breath of air stirring, and the trees were standing perfectly still, yet he could hear the wind howling. And the more he listened, the more it sounded as if it were calling Defago's name. Defago, it sounded. I guess that's how you pronounce it. Defago! And I must be losing my mind, the hunter thought. Here's a beautiful image. Let's take this off, it's annoying me. But Defago had gotten out of his sleeping bag. He was huddled in the corner of the tent, his head buried in his arms. What's this all about? The hunter said. It's nothing, Defago said. But the wind continued to call to him, and Defago became more tense and more restless. Defago! It called. Defago! Suddenly he jumped to his feet, and he began to run from the tent, but the hunter grabbed him and wrestled him to the ground. You can't leave me out here, the hunter shouted. Then the wind called again, and Defago broke loose and ran into the darkness. The hunter could hear him screaming as he went. Again and again he cried, "Oh, my fiery feet, my burning feet of fire!" Then his voice faded away, and the wind died down. At daybreak, the hunter followed Defago's tracks in the snow. They went through the woods, down toward the lake, then out into the ice, but soon he noticed something strange. The steps Defago had taken got longer and longer. They were so long no human being could have taken them. It was as if something had helped him to hurry away. The hunter followed the tracks out into the middle of the lake, but then they disappeared. At first he thought that Defago had fallen through the ice, but there wasn't any hole. Then he thought that something had pulled him off of the ice into the sky, but that made no sense. As he stood wondering what had happened, the wind picked up again. Soon it was howling as it had the night before. Then he heard Defago's voice that was coming up from above, and again he heard Defago screaming, "My fiery feet, my burning feet!" But there was nothing to be seen. Now the hunter wanted to leave that place as fast as he could. He went back to the camp and packed. Then he left some food for Defago as he started out. Weeks later he reached civilization. The following year he went back to hunt in that area again. He went to the same trading post to look for a guide. The people there could not explain what had happened to Defago that night, but they had not seen him since then. "Maybe it was the Wendigo," one of them said, and he laughed. "It's supposed to come with the wind. It drags you along at a great speed until your feet are burned away, and more of you than that. Then it carries you into the sky and it drops you. It's just a crazy story, but that's what some of the indigenous people say." It still says Indians. A few days later, the hunter was at the trading post again. An indigenous person came in and sat by the fire. He had a blanket wrapped around him, and he wore his hat so that you couldn't see his face. The hunter thought there was something familiar about him. He walked over and asked, "Are you Defago?" The Indian didn't answer. "Do you know anything about him?" No answer. He began to wonder if something was wrong, if the man needed help, but he couldn't see his face. "Are you all right?" he asked. No answer. To get a look at him, he lifted the Indian's hat. Then he screamed. There was nothing under the hat but a pile of ashes. That was interesting. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I know me and Theodore did. If you're interested in more horror stories, I wrote my own horror novella. I'm reading it Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, one chapter per day. And it's about exorcism and demonic possession, but it's twisted. And I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!
We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since days of old. We were dead a long time ago. We're the ghosts of the stories you've told. We were dead a long time ago. We've been ghosts since the days of old. We were dead a long time ago. Ghosts in the scary stories you've told. Shadows in the moonlight. Creatures in the trees. Glowing eyes surround me as I question all I've seen. The past has